Hello everyone and welcome back to the SteemTrail Gaming News. Today is the 17th February 2018. My name is Kralizec and I will be your host for the evening. Today we got only two stories for you guys. One of them is that Intel is facing 32 lawsuits over the whole Meltdown and Spectre thing. And secondly, we're going to talk about a System Shock reboot which is currently having some issues. But let's first take a look at Intel. And if you guys don't know, Meltdown and Spectre are two huge compromising exploits found in CPUs. Meltdown is solely on Intel CPUs, while Spectre is found essentially on every single CPU on the market. But Meltdown honestly is the bigger problem, as it is more easily exploitable and can certainly cause a lot of problems for Intel. And right now the problems are starting to pile up. There are currently 30 customer class action lawsuits, and in addition to that, 2 securities class action lawsuits related to these CPU vulnerabilities that are being claimed against Intel. You can obviously tell this is a huge freaking number of class action lawsuits. I would say they would probably have a better chance of succeeding if they sort of bundle them together. Maybe have like 4 tops, you know, 4 for customer class lawsuits and maybe 2 for the security class action lawsuits, as this will give probably Intel some ground to battle these claims on, as that is what Intel is planning to do. In the filing, Intel says the customer lawsuits generally claim to have been harmed by Intel's actions and or omissions in connection with their security vulnerabilities, and they obviously seek some monetary damages and equitable relief. And I'm going to guess that at least some, if not a majority, of these class action lawsuits are just going to be dismissed because they're not going to be put well together, but some may come through. And I would actually expect that at least 1 or 2 will come through, and it will cost Intel a shit ton of money if they do. That's the reason why I think they would be better off bundling them together, as then they would have a higher chance of winning. On top of that, having a higher number of people who have been harmed by the actions of Intel, essentially making him pay that much more money. Intel has noted that they will plan to defend against them vigorously. However, they will not willing to estimate what kind of financial hit might arise from this, well, shit pile of lawsuits. What Intel also said is, given the procedure posture and the nature of these cases, including that the proceedings are in the early stages, that alleged damages have not been specified, that uncertainty exists as to the likelihood of a class or classes being certified, of the ultimate size of any class or classes is certified, and that there are significant factual and legal issues to be resolved. We are unable to make a reasonable estimate of the potential loss of range of losses, if any, that might arise from these matters. First of all, what the fuck? Lawyer speaking is one of the most confusing shit ever, and is done on purpose because they do want to sound confusing so they can find loopholes in their arguments. One of the lawsuits that was talked about by Gamer last month alleged that Intel has been aware of the material defect in this microchip that leaves its customers susceptible to unauthorized access by hackers. The material defect lets hackers compromise the privileged memory of Intel's processor by exploiting the way processors run in parallel. The material defect also lets hackers use code running in a browser to access memory in the attacker's process, potentially exposing customers' passwords and personal information. Intel knew of the material defect in its microchips and intentionally chose not to disclose the defect to its customers. That's what the lawsuit stated. And yeah, to a degree, that's actually what happened. But there are a few things that should be taken into consideration. One of the things is as soon as you tell customers about this exploit existing, it means that suddenly a slew of viruses and websites, etc., etc., essentially hackers and attackers, will start to use this specific exploit. Until nobody knows about it, nobody will use it to attack. That will probably be one of the defenses that will be used by Intel, specifically in the cases where it will be, oh, they should have told us about it. And they will be like, no, if we told about it, you would actually get attacked and we couldn't help you. So we told you right before we patched it. And that actually is a reasonable defense, and it will probably go pretty well on Intel sides. The bigger question is, will they be able to defend against people claiming, okay, the patches you gave out actually severely impacted the output your processors are giving to our servers, the computers, etc., and we had to upgrade our computers because suddenly the computers that were working fine before the patch to fill all our needs aren't there anymore. This has been cases specifically from what I know with, for example, Fortnite servers, which they say they had something to upwards of 50% drop in performance after the patch, which is seriously an insane number. Now, obviously, we also talked about the fact that the impact on normal customer performance isn't really that important, but on data centers and people who run many servers, the impact would have obviously been much larger. And if these companies take a class action lawsuit together, they might have a very good chance of actually winning said lawsuit. Okay, let's now take a look at System Shock, one of the most beloved RPG games that is, you know, one of the RPG games of old, essentially the game that spewed the whole shock genre, let's call it, you know, BioShock and System Shock 2 and many others, is being rebooted by a studio who got about $1.35 million on Kickstarter, but it seems that they have already depleted their funds, and this is a very common problem with Kickstarters, specifically when you take into consideration the fact that they only asked for $900,000, well, only, but they still got about 50% more, and they're already out of money without the game being finished. The people who want to make these, let's call them fan projects, often underestimate how much money they will actually need to finish these projects. And this is obviously the case, and it doesn't really help when the project gets more money than they originally estimated, because they might have some sort of a budget, and when suddenly you have lots of money to spend over the budget, you might make stupid decisions like, oh, we can just buy cooler voice actors and cooler developers and cooler artists, etc., etc. And suddenly you find yourself in a position where the money you have just isn't enough. I'm going to assume that this might have been the case here. The CEO of the company, Stephen Cake, announced that the project has been put on hold as they really don't have the money. What he said is, maybe we were too successful, maybe we lost our focus. The vision began to change. We moved from a remaster to a completely new game. We shifted engines from Unity to Unreal, a choice we don't regret and one that has worked out for us. With the switch, we began envisioning doing more, but staying from the core concept of the original title. As our concept grew and as our team changed, so did the scope of what we were doing, and with that, the budget for the game. As the budget grew, we began a long series of conversations with potential publishing partners. The more that we worked on the game, the more that we wanted to do, and the further we got from the original concepts that made System Shock so great. Yeah, as I said, they got too much money and they overestimated what they can actually do. And this might be actually sort of a thing what you take into consideration when you're considering backing up a project on Kickstarter or any other Kickstarting platform. Because often the projects that barely meet their limits do better than the ones that just go, holy crap, we made so much money, what are we going to do with it? Maybe we can add cool features. Because the cool features aren't really usually that well defined in their head. They don't know how much money will need to be spent to implement them, whether they are actually deliverable, whether they can make it on the schedule they planned for the project, etc, etc, etc. So if you're considering backing a project, I would suggest you wait a little bit to see whether it explodes or not. If it explodes and has reached its goal, I would actually suggest you don't back it. It's not worth it, even though you might be, oh, I really want those cool features that come with backing the project. Yeah, but you also might be sort of shooting down the project, making it, in the developer's head, something, oh, the people want it so much. We can make even something better than we initially envisioned. Sadly, the fact is, people's visions are often not reality. And just taking that into consideration is a good thing you should do. And in general, I would actually suggest not to back many Kickstarter projects, like barely any, if any, because well, Kickstarter projects often just are pretty shitty, especially when it comes to digital services. Let's say if you're considering ordering a board game, then they usually have like a test game that, yeah, it exists, we just need money to manufacture it. Then it probably is okay to kickstart it or something like that. But when it comes to a project that needs to be built, I would be very, very cautious in backing it. And that's going to be it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please consider giving us a thumbs up here on YouTube and subscribing to our channel. If you are watching this on Steam, maybe you want to upload our post and follow our blog. Also, be sure to leave a comment. Tell me if you have ever kickstarted something, if you regret it, or have been pleasantly surprised with your decision to do so. Be also sure to tune in tomorrow, as we are a daily source of everyday gaming news. And see you guys later with more gaming content.